The year is winding down and you're probably looking forward to some well-deserved time off. But if you take a little bit of that spare time and use it wisely, you can make sure you're wrapping up this year with confidence. So next year starts with fewer loose ends and fewer decisions hanging over you. I'm Matt, a retired physician turned flat fee financial planner, and this is the year-end checklist that I use for my own family. Number one, do a spending review. This is the hardest one by far, but it's also the most valuable. So get it out of the way first. Gather all your bank statements and credit card bills together and add up what you spent in the year. Even better, fill in a spreadsheet so that you can see exactly where your money went. How much are you spending on basic living needs like mortgage payments, utilities, and groceries? How much are you spending on discretionary items like travel and restaurants? If you're not already doing this, chances are you're going to be a little bit nervous. Don't be. Be curious. No one else needs to know what you spent on takeout or Amazon last year, but you do. It's very difficult to feel confident about your finances if you don't know what your life costs. Most people actually feel relief after doing this. They often discover that they can spend more on things that matter to them by spending a little bit less on the things that don't. Number two, calculate your net worth. Don't let the word calculate here turn you off. This is actually really easy. All you have to do is add up what you own, just the big things like account balances and an estimate of your property value, and then subtract what you owe, mortgage, line of credit, plus any other loans. You don't need to be exact because things are going to fluctuate year over year, especially if you have a lot of investments. But tracking your net worth year over year is a simple but powerful assessment of your overall financial health and trajectory over time. So find a spreadsheet online or build your own and watch that trend. While you're working, the overall trend should be up, but in retirement, it can plateau and even decrease at a sustainable rate. This is one of the easiest metrics to understand how you're doing on your financial path. Number three is contribute to your registered accounts. Whether you're incorporated or not, your registered accounts should be the top priority. In fact, one of the most powerful financial hacks out there is the pay yourself first idea. Instead of spending first and trying to save what's left over, you save first and then spend what's left. It's kind of like a reverse budget, and it works wonders. So here's a quick guide to your registered accounts. For the RRSP, technically you have until the end of February to use this year's RRSP contribution room, but when it comes to investing, it rarely pays to wait. And furthermore, claiming the tax deduction sooner rather than later will lower your income tax bill. So get this squared away. You can check your contribution room on your MyCRA online account. And while you're on that account, you can check out your TFSA contribution room too. Just be aware that if you already made contributions, their number might be a little bit out of date. But regardless, whenever possible, I recommend using the TFSA as a long-term investment account because all the investments in it grow tax-free and they come out tax-free as well. So make a plan to fill it up and continue to make the maximum annual contributions. When I do long-term projections with early and mid-career clients, they're often amazed at how huge their TFSAs could become by retirement, like 7 figures huge. But that only happens if you start early. Next, we have RESPs, which are the best deal around when it comes to saving for post-secondary education. The lifetime contribution limit per beneficiary is $50,000, and the government will chip in 20% of the first $2,500 annual contribution that you make per beneficiary, per child. That's a bonus of $500 per year. And then the last registered account I want to talk about is the FHSA. If you qualify for one of these and you can afford the $8,000 per year contributions, open an FHSA and start filling it. Why is this account so good? Well, it's really like an RRSP and TFSA love child. You get the tax deduction for your contribution, the money grows tax-free in the account, and the money can be withdrawn tax-free as long as it's used toward the purchase of a home. The cherry on top is that if you don't use the funds to buy a home in the next 15 years, you can just transfer the balance of your FHSA into your RRSP. Number 4, Prepare for big upcoming expenses. Everyone understands that they have monthly expenses, and most people understand that they should be putting money away for retirement. But very few people have a good system for what I call lumpy intermittent expenses. These are the big ticket items that only come up every 1 to 5 years or so. But if you don't plan for them, you'll never feel good about your finances. The common ones are vehicle replacements, travel, and home maintenance and renovations. Don't put yourself in a position where you're borrowing for these things. Instead, save for them beforehand so that you can actually enjoy spending money on them without worrying that you're screwing up one of your other big goals, like your retirement plans or your kids' education. I think the simplest way to do this is to set up a handful of high interest savings accounts, one for each of those spending priorities. And then you take your estimated budget, divide it by the time until you plan on making that purchase, and then just set up an automatic transfer for that amount into the account. For example, if you want to spend $15,000 per year on travel, well, $15,000 divided by 12 is $1,250 per month. Set that up as an automatic transfer into your travel account, then you'll know that you've got the money there to do the trips that you want to do. In my opinion, one more essential high interest savings account is your emergency fund. This is like your own personal insurance policy against those expensive happens events that no one saw coming, but you get to keep all the premiums that you're paying to yourself. Like many people, I didn't actually realize how valuable an emergency fund was until I'd been adulting long enough to need one. We were already pretty financially responsible, but when our furnace broke in the middle of winter and we had to come up with $7,000 quickly, I hated dipping into the line of credit that I'd worked so hard to pay off, not to mention the interest that instantly started accruing on that. For most physicians, I think the usual advice of 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses is probably too much. 1 or 2 months worth is usually good and far more palatable to most people. Personally, I think the ideal scenario is some cash in a high interest savings account, plus an unused line of credit as a backup plan. Now, what about your long-term savings? Are you sitting on cash that should be invested? Do you still hold stocks or mutual funds simply because you haven't had the time or the confidence to update your portfolio? Is your asset allocation appropriate for your risk tolerance? Do you hold 5 different ETFs when one would do the job? Or maybe your money is with a high fee advisor that you no longer actually feel comfortable with, and you're procrastinating making the switch to low-cost index investing. All of these things are really common and tend to happen when our portfolios are neglected just because we're so busy with the rest of life. All of us could make improvements in one way or another, but now is the perfect time to clean up those investments and get on the right path for you. Number 7, map out next year's spending and saving. Excellent investment decisions are only as good as the savings that fund them. So how much should you be saving for retirement? I think a good rule of thumb for many physicians is about 20% of your pre-tax income. Usually the first priority is your registered accounts that we discussed, but once those are full, if you're incorporated, the rest can be invested there. Some people like to fund these savings with monthly contributions, others like lump sums at the beginning of the year. Either one is fine, just make a plan to do it. And then the rest of your after-tax income can be spent worry-free as long as you're setting aside money for those lumpy intermittent expenses that we talked about in step 4. No one likes to budget, and this is really how you avoid it. Number 8, reassess your insurance needs. It is surprisingly rare for me to work with physicians who have the right amount of life and disability insurance. Many early career physicians are underinsured, while mid and late career physicians are sometimes overinsured. Short of working with an evidence-based insurance advisor or financial planner, there are some decent online calculators that you can use to get a pretty good idea for yourself what appropriate insurance coverage looks like for you. Now, the amount of coverage is one thing, but the type of coverage is another thing. And one common issue that I see is being sold permanent insurance, cash value insurance, when simpler term life coverage would have been sufficient and probably a better option. This is so important that I made a whole other video about it. We're almost there. Number 9, update your will and power of attorney. I know this is kind of boring for most people, but please don't stop the video here. I'll keep this quick. If your will and powers of attorney either don't exist or are out of date, just look up a decent lawyer and get this done. Getting this stuff in order means that you determine what happens to you and your assets if you're no longer able to call the shots. If you die without a will, something called intestacy rules take over, and you'd likely be horrified at some of the results. So just get this done. Lastly, what can you improve for next year? If this is your first time going through a checklist like this, chances are you're going to have a nice list of things to do that will have a huge positive impact on your financial life already. So if so, you can stop now and just start tackling those tasks. But if you've been at this for a while and you feel like you're on autopilot at this point, well, first of all, congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment. Just mentally fast forward another few years. Is there something that you could do now that you might be thankful for later? A few possibilities come to mind for me, like maybe setting up a spending tracker app on your phone. This is an easy way to get feedback on your spending habits and will make next year's review even easier. Or maybe review some expenses that are currently on autopilot for you, such as insurance and cell phone plans, and maybe see if you could get a better deal. Or if you're later in your career or retired already and you're sure that you're financially secure, now may be a good time to crunch some numbers and spend big on something that matters to you. It could be a trip of a lifetime or an early inheritance for your kids, or maybe a significant charitable donation. In my experience, you're more likely to regret waiting too long to do these things rather than doing them too early. Now, 10 steps might feel like a lot. If it does, just start with one or two. But either way, I found that doing this once a year reduces the amount of financial work we have to do the rest of the time. Each step puts a simple system in place, which means fewer decisions, fewer surprises as the year unfolds, and more confidence that we're on the right track.